The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Good morning to you here at 5 a.m. Thanks for waking up with us. I'm Maddie Jansen alongside Alex Fisher.
This morning we are following some breaking news of an officer-involved shooting in East Bakersfield. The 7-Eleven gas station on Union Avenue and 19th Street. Police say the shooting happened around 3:20 this morning. There are no other details at this point. We are still trying to get more information about what happened, and we will give you an update as soon as we learn more. Several roads are blocked off. Try to avoid the area if you can.
This is the second officer-involved shooting in a span of just 24 hours here in Bakersfield. Early yesterday morning, police were called to the area of Butte and Kern streets for a shot spotter activation. A 2-officer patrol unit, along with a community member ride-along, responded to the scene. The BPD says officers tried to contact a man who then pulled out a handgun and fired at them. Police say one officer returned fire and the man ran away. That prompted a foot chase, and police say the man continued to shoot at officers as they chased him. Police say it's not yet known if the suspect was hit. No officers or the person who was riding along were hurt. The suspect is still on the run this morning.
We are also following more breaking news out of Western Asia this morning of a deadly earthquake. There are scary scenes coming in from Turkey after a 7.8 magnitude earthquake rattled the country overnight. Officials say as of now, more than 1,500 people have died across Turkey and Syria, and those numbers are expected to rise. Rescue efforts are in full force this morning, with workers and residents searching for survivors underneath the rubble of crushed buildings across multiple cities. Hundreds of buildings collapsed in the quake. One witness claims the earth shook for about 90 seconds. The quake was estimated to be about 11 miles deep and was felt in Lebanon and Cyprus as well. And the powerful shaking is not over. A 7.5 magnitude quake struck the region just about 2 hours ago. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan issued a statement this morning saying the U.S. is ready to provide any and all needed assistance to Turkey and Syria.
This morning, the U.S. is working to recover possible remains of the Chinese spy balloon. The debris field spans about 7 miles. President Biden getting mixed reactions after he directed the military to take it down. NBC's Bree Jackson is in Washington this morning with more.
Eyes were glued to the sky as an American F-22 Raptor shot down a Chinese spy balloon Saturday.
I ordered the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible.
The Biden administration first detecting the high-altitude surveillance tool on January 28th in Alaska. Its path eventually crossing over into Montana, Wyoming, Kansas, Missouri, and finally the Carolinas, flying over sensitive military sites along the way before it was blown to pieces over the Atlantic Ocean near Myrtle Beach. Debris picked up and brought to shore.
Clearly, the president taking it down over the Atlantic is sort of like the quarterback, sort of like tackling the quarterback after the game is over.
Republicans argue China was testing President Biden's strength.
Unfortunately, the president failed that test, and that's dangerous for the American people.
I would use 2 words in answering these GOP criticisms. They are premature and they are political. Our friends are playing politics with U.S. intelligence.
Administration officials saying the president's actions weaken China's surveillance capabilities.
You saw a great example of the coordination and cooperation between a lot of different players in our government to make sure everything happens safely.
Tensions with China are rising following the downed spy balloon. Officials in Beijing blasting the United States for shooting it out of the sky, calling it a clear overreaction.
2 men are under arrest following a deadly shooting in East Bakersfield. Police say the shooting happened around 1:30 Saturday morning on Baker Street near East Truxton Avenue. Officers say a man had been shot several times and died at the scene. Around 5 p.m. that evening, police arrested 37-year-old Rafael Lopez and 19-year-old Giovanni Garcia in connection to the shooting. Investigators say they did locate several guns during the investigation, including the presumed murder weapon. According to police, no additional suspects are believed to have been involved. And the Kern County Sheriff's Office is investigating a homicide in Lake Isabella. KCSO says detectives responded to a call for a welfare check yesterday at a home on Erskine Creek Road. That is where deputies found 2 men with trauma to their upper bodies. KCSO says a weapon was found at the home and there are no suspects believed to be outstanding. The men have not publicly been identified.
Nearly 3 weeks after 6 family members were massacred in Tulare County, 2 men are under arrest. KGET was on the scene in Goshen Friday morning when the suspects were captured during Operation Nightmare. 3 search warrants were served that morning, 1 in Visalia, 2 in Goshen. And inmate sales associated with the prison gangs were searched in multiple state prisons. The operation ending in the arrest of 25-year-old Noah Beard and 35-year-old Angel Uriarte. One of the men was wounded during a shootout with police. He is expected to survive. Police say they were closely monitoring both men since January 23rd, just days after that massacre. Tulare County Sheriff Mike Boudreau also revealed that 2 members of the slain Peraz family were known Sureño gang members in Goshen, a town predominantly held by the Norteño gang. The suspects were allegedly part of the rival gang, but police say the motive is still unclear.
Law enforcement works for you. We're family. We're human beings. Our hearts are broken in cases like this as well. We're not the enemy. And I want the citizens of Tulare County to sleep a little safer tonight, knowing that these baby-killing murderers are off the street.
Sheriff Boudreau also called on Governor Gavin Newsom last week to reinstate the death penalty for the alleged shooters, saying the ban should be lifted in cases where small children are murdered.
Protesters gathered in Los Angeles County over the weekend demanding accountability after the deadly shooting of a double amputee last month. New footage of the encounter is expected to be released later today, which could reveal key details about the moments leading up to that shooting. We do want to warn you, some of the footage can be disturbing. Dana Griffin has more.
Outrage in Los Angeles County as the city of Huntington Park awaits the release of new surveillance video showing the deadly police shooting of 36-year-old Anthony Lowe Jr.
We've got to find a way to hold the police, the sheriff department accountable.
The wheelchair-bound double amputee was shot roughly 10 times by Huntington Park police during this encounter on January 26th, captured in this grainy cell phone video. It shows Lowe attempting to flee from officers while holding what appears to be a large knife. Another angle shows officers approaching with their guns drawn, one flinching before they start firing. You can hear the sounds of gunshots as a vehicle obstructs the full view. Before the shooting, officers say Lowe stabbed a man with a 12-inch butcher knife. Lowe allegedly threatened to advance or throw the knife at the officers, who say they then deployed 2 separate tasers but were ineffective. Police said after Lowe's continued advances, officers opened fire.
They treated my cousin like he was the animal.
The officers seen in the video have been placed on paid administrative leave, pending the investigation. On Friday, the family announced they would be filing a lawsuit against the city, alleging wrongful death and civil rights violations.
You can tell that he was in fear for his life. You know, he had no legs. It could have been handled any other way.
In your 17 Health Watch this morning, California will not be requiring children to get the coronavirus vaccine to attend schools. That is a reversal from Governor Newsom's 2021 announcement that the state would add the COVID vaccine to its list of mandated vaccinations for kids to attend school. Now, public health officials say they are no longer moving ahead with the effort as the state prepares to end its coronavirus emergency later this month. State public health officials say they still strongly recommend immunization of students and staff.
A new study confirms what many doctors already suspected. Getting kids back in school soon after a concussion is good for recovery. The study was conducted by the Children's National Hospital in Maryland. Doctors found that kids 5 to 18 years old who suffered a sports-related concussion had fewer symptoms if they returned to school just a few days after their injury. For many years, rest and relaxation was prescribed as the best way to recover. But recently, doctors have found getting kids back into the groove really helps them heal.
You know, we're social beings. We like to be with people. And so Isolation is not necessarily the best thing. Schedules are really good for kids. So keeping them on a schedule back in their kind of norm is also good for them.
The study recommends kids between 8 and 18 can return to school within 2 days of their injury.
Making headlines around the nation, crews worked to set up a fence around the U.S. Capitol this weekend ahead of President Joe Biden's State of the Union address happening tomorrow. Capitol Police and Secret Service agents recommended the installation of a fence around the White House as a safety precaution. Fencing has been installed several times in the area since the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, including for the 2022 State of the Union address. Tomorrow's address will take place at 6 p.m. and you can watch it right here on 17 News.
We're learning more about a hazardous materials situation after a train derailed Friday in eastern Ohio. Thousands are under evacuation orders as concerns grow over the safety of the air and water in that region. Take a look. The volatile and dangerous scene forcing first responders and investigators to stay back as they try to determine how this train derailment happened and why. NTSB investigators say 20 train cars were carrying hazardous materials. 10 of those cars derailed. The NTSB says 5 of the cars that derailed were carrying vinyl chloride, which is associated with an increased risk of certain cancers. Officials say air quality and water supply are being monitored. However, they remain safe at the time. Ohio EPA says some material entered local waterways, though, before containment measures were in place. More than 1,500 people within a 1-mile radius were forced to evacuate. Sheriff's deputies are still going door to door, urging people to leave.
I saw this big, huge flame. A police car came up and said, evacuate, evacuate, evacuate.
I can't stress enough that if you are in the evacuation zone, you need to leave.
The East Palestine School District has canceled classes for today. Understandably, when you see these images, the junior high and senior high schools are being used as evacuation shelters.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.